Thank you, Kathy Steinbeck. Music.
Wait.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy Steinbeck. I'm going to ask Carolyn Casey to now come forward, and she's going to talk about the church, the gifts, and the 2,000 acres.
Don't let me forget these. I may forget they're behind me. Good morning, everybody, and it's so nice to see all of you here. It's so nice to know that obviously we are all related in some way. And family does stick together. I'm going to start right now with my introduction and then go into the presentation. Remember, not all family stories can be told. So today we'll be looking at specifically the Faree and the Faulkner families. You'll see several of us with this. We are quite proud. It has been said that the Faree family fled France to escape the Edict of Nantes in 1685. However, a court record has appeared in the archives of Speyer, Germany, which refutes that traditional story. In 1681, we find Daniel Faree Sr. is living in Steinweiler when he makes a purchase of goods from an estate. His wife's name is various names, various spellings, various pronunciations. Marie Warrenboer, Maria Warrenbauer, Marie Della Warrenboer, and there's several other ones. But it's still the same person. The date of Daniel's information is still unresolved. However, he was dead by 10 March 1708 because his name is missing from the request for a family passport out of Germany. It can only be assumed that he died in Steinweiler where the passport originated. 2 documents were required to leave: a passport and a valid certificate of the church. At this time in London, Reverend Joshua Cokerthal had procured free passage to New York for some of the people who were escaping to England. There were 56 people in his group. William Penn had spread the word among the war-torn countries that Pennsylvania was a land of golden opportunity. He even knew back then that it would be. Daniel Faree Jr. and family, Isaac Lefevre and family were on this ship. Reverend Cokerthal later made a second trip to get the rest of the Palatines. He went back a second time. Excuse me. The Board of Trade approved the Cokerthal list, but added one requirement, which was letters of denization. And this meant that they had to be naturalized citizens before they could leave. The Palatines were naturalized in August in 1708. Therefore, when Daniel Jr. and Isaac reached New York, they were already British citizens. In mid-October 1708, 3 ships left England bound for New York. The ship named Globe contained the Palatines with Cokerthal. The only members of the Faree family on the Globe were Daniel Faree Jr., his wife Anna Marie Leininger, and 2 sons, plus Isaac Lefevre and his wife Catherine Faree. Maria was still in Steinweiler with her 4 other children, Mary Catherine, John, Jane, and Philip. Maria arrived in London on 6 May 1709, and Maria's age was given at 56, thus making her born in 1653. She stayed in London until sometime in December 1709. According to the documents in Chester County, Pennsylvania, it is clear that while in London, Maria and her daughters must have encountered Thomas Faulkner and Richard Davis, who would later become the future husbands of Mary Catherine and Jane Ferry in 1715 at the church in Newcastle, Delaware. Thomas and Richard were obviously British subjects. Both of their names were on the 1710 survey instructions for 333 acres, a piece out of the 2,000 acres that would be granted to Maria. Thomas Faulkner and Richard Davis do not appear to be in Chester County before 1714. And it is not known on which ship Maria sailed because of all the passenger lists for ships sailing to the colonies before 1727, they had been lost. So we don't know for sure which ship she sailed on. According to the European custom of the day, women did not take the surnames of their husbands, which is why we always refer to her as Marie Ferry or Maria Ferry. Therefore, she was Maria Warrenbauer, however they were pronouncing it or spelling it at that time, and she was never Ferry. However, upon her death, her name became Marie Ferry and has gone down through centuries by this name. However, technically it is incorrect. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the church. And this is the Emmanuel Church that was founded in 1689. And it was the first parish of the Church of England in Delaware. Work on the building began in 1703 and it was completed in 1708. And there was an expansion of the building that continued between 1820 to 1822 by William Strickland. He was a most noted architect of the 19th century. This expansion included the addition of the bell tower. The pulpit and altar were relocated to their current location, and the chancel was set off by a curved altar rail identical to the one that's in place today. Over the years, the church has undergone changes to reflect Victorian tastes. In 1900, parish changes were made to replace the Victorian elements with features in the colonial revival style. On February 1st, 1980, a brush fire in the town devastated the whole church. I interviewed the priest over at the church. And actually my husband and I went with me, and we really had a lovely time with this man. But they explained that there was a field fire in the area, and a piece of this debris flew over onto the top of the roof. And it was extinguished as quickly as possible. However, no one knew that there was a subroof underneath. Now, whether that subroof was still a thatched roof, I'm not sure. But there was a subroof underneath, so what they thought was out was now smoldering underneath. And so therefore, the fire quickly spread. And it was decimated. Only the walls still stood, which is the reason today why they still call it the original church, because the walls were still there. But everything else was a total loss. With the exception of the original walls, the church was restored and completed by 1982 by William Strickland's 1820 neoclassical design known as Noble Simplicity. Since the walls remained intact, this is the reason today why it is referred to, as I said, the original church. And I had some trivia that I thought I'd share with you. The priest shared this with me. First of all, the first priest of the church, the Emmanuel Church, was George Ross. And Betsy Ross came out of that line, which I thought was interesting. And Benjamin Franklin also attended this church. And back in those days, if you wanted to have one of those pews, you know, with a little door on it so you could go in and have privacy and only you were allowed to be there, he purchased one of those. But later he was sent a letter of delinquent payment, and it was never paid. So I thought that was pretty cute. All right, let's move, oh, one other thing I wanted to, no, I'll add that later. We're going to the gifts. There were gifts given to this church. And it is known that Queen Anne gave the gift to the Emmanuel Church in Delaware. However, the reason that she gave these gifts has really been misunderstood and fictionalized. Some people seem to think that it was because of the Farees. No, that wasn't it. And I'll go on. She gave these gifts to the church. They were not because of the Faree family, and that Mary's meeting with the Queen was orchestrated by William Penn. Also, that she gave Marie financial aid to lead the country, and then she promised her land when she got to the New World. However, this seems to be total fiction. At that time, Queen Anne's husband had died shortly before. So technically, it seems that the Queen was in mourning and she wasn't even at Kensington Palace. Possibly there was an emissary of the Queen who might have been present if this happened at all. Also, William Penn possibly was locked in the Tower of London, so he could not be there either. Maybe an emissary was there from him, we don't know. But it is a nice story, but I guess it never really happened the way we'd like to think that it might have. Excuse me, Martin Kendig and the Swissers, the Mennonites, who set up this deal with Queen Anne's emissary to give them 10,000 acres in one parcel, was to be divided among the people once it was surveyed after arriving in Pennsylvania. And Marie and her family were part of that deal. And Thomas and Richard met them in England. And we're also trying to research this a little bit more, but it's a possibility that Thomas Faulkner and Richard Davis were actually surveyors themselves in England and had a little bit more of an in with the group than anyone else might have had. According to Father Christopher Keene of the Emmanuel Church on the Green, which it is called today, the reason for the Queen's gifts was because every church of England and the Anglican Church that established the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. Today it's known as the SPG, Society for Propagation of the Gospel. In the new land was given by the Queen. They were promoting that the Anglican Church, or the Church of England in the new land, was now there. And these gifts were presented by the governor. So it wasn't an emissary of the Queen, it was somebody that was already here, it was the governor at the time. And I wanted to read to you a little passage from a book. I bought this book over at the Emmanuel Church. It's called God is With Us, A Continuing Presence in Vital Records taken from the parish registries of Emmanuel Church, Newcastle, Delaware. But concerning this instance, it says the SPG, the Society for Propagation of the Gospel, is still commonly called, as it is commonly called, was organized in 1701 with a twofold purpose to carry the Christian faith via the Church of England to the heathens of the colonies and to establish education and culture here. The original purpose was not to establish clergy in settled communities so much as to convert and educate the heathen, meaning primarily the Indians and black slaves. The SPG sent out almost as many teachers as clergy in the early days of history. What we really see here is the tendency of Anglicans to merge the concept of Christian faith and life with British culture and civilization. The two were often thought of as not only inseparable, but virtually indistinguishable. As an adage of the time held, doubtless it is possible to be a Christian without being an Anglican, but no gentleman would avail himself of the opportunity. All right, so, excuse me, Queen Anne gave 4 gifts to the church. And these gifts were sterling silver, and they were created by Simeon Soumain, Frenchman, and they were to be used in the Eucharistic service. And as you can see, I'm going to go through these gifts. I took pictures of these, and I wanted to explain, this up here is a reflection of the lights and everything in the church. It's not dark. I mean, these are very highly polished silver. They're gorgeous, but they are sterling silver. Now, the priest told me, he said, I know it looks like a beer stein, but this is the priest's flagon, and it never held beer, only wine. And they always use a flagon at every service, but this was what Queen Anne gave. Let me go to the next one. The second one was the ciborium. This is a chalice, but it's called the ciborium. And this would be, you can see it's like a little dish, the paten. The paten would hold the host for the congregation. Only the congregation would drink out of this and take their host from this. And you can see here the opposite. The ciborium has a twofold purpose. It also serves as a lid or a covering over the ciborium. But you can see they're very elegant. And I was so grateful that I was able to see them, because these are locked in a vault. And these are the gifts. This is the flagon, the ciborium, the paten that Queen Anne gave. These other two things, I took the picture because they were there, but these two things, the paten is used, this is the priest's paten, that's why it's on the side with the priest's flagon. And this is another ciborium, but it has a paten on top of it that you can't turn it upside down because the cross is there, and it wouldn't hold anything. But these two items on the ends are used every Sunday. These items are only used twice a year, and that is at Christmas and Easter. And if they happen to have another service to celebrate the dedication of the church, then they would use it for that. Otherwise, they are locked in the vault. Okay. Let me get back to my notes. And by the way, I wanted to make sure that you understand that paten, the priest spelled it for me, it is P-A-T-E-N. There was one more gift, there was a fourth gift. However, no one ever sees it. It was a small prayer book given by Queen Anne. And everything is locked in the vault. There used to be a woman who would field genealogy questions, and she died. And so now nobody goes into the vault. The secretary has told me this. No one goes into the vault except the priest. And when I asked him about it, is there a chance I could see this prayer book? And he said, no, I'm sorry. He said, I can't even go into the vault without a security guard. But he said people can't see it because of its age, its brittleness, its rarity. So it stays there. It would be nice if we could get some group, maybe like National Geographic or something, that could go in and photograph that.
I'm a pro photographer. I'm a professional photographer.
I don't know that they would let you do it, but it would be nice if we could do that. I would have thought that they would have thought of something like that, you know, just to preserve it, because the pages have to be extremely brittle after all of these years. Oh, and these are the various ciboriums. I took these. They can use these on regular Sundays. These are not the special things from Queen Anne. But I wanted you to see how ornate some of them can be. And this one actually is encrusted with some diamonds. There's a bigger diamond here, there's some little ones. You can see them all around here. I thought that was really unique. But those can be used in the regular services. Myself, I was really surprised at the plainness of the silver. I was thinking, well, it came from Queen Anne. It's going to be something really ornate, you know. But as you can see, it wasn't. It was just elegant simplicity, which would have actually explained who she was. She wasn't into all that gingerbread, as we might call it today. Like I said, Father Keene also showed me some other things that they used at the other services. Okay, let's move into the 2,000 acres. There's been some question about, did Marie get her 2,000 acres? Yes, Marie got her 2,000 acres. My husband and I went over to Westchester University to get the documents. I have them, you'll see copies of them in a moment, but I have what I copied, they were copies of the original documents, and it is not good quality. Most of it, it seems like it's starting to fade, but at least we have them. But first, the land was negotiated and promised to Marie once her family arrived in the new land, Chester County, Pennsylvania. It was Chester County then, today it is Lancaster County. However, this was not free land. The 2,000 acres was only to be purchased once they arrived. It was promised to them, but it had to be purchased. It also had to be divided among Marie's 6 children. Women were not permitted to own the land, only the men, so it had to be in the name of the husband. When Daniel Jr. and his sister Catherine arrived, they received their 33 acres each. However, Catherine's share had to be written in her husband's name, Isaac Lefevre. While in England, Maria negotiated for husbands for her 2 youngest daughters, Mary Catherine and Jane. And it was agreed that Thomas Faulkner would marry Mary Catherine, and Richard Davis would marry Jane. Both couples were married by church bands. Do you have a picture of that? No, that's the church bands.
I don't know where that is.
What are these papers that you're going through?
This is the research. Okay, let's go over this.
Yeah.
This is the research from Westchester University showing that they received the 2,000 acres. I'll go back to that other one. This is the first page. This is as you see it. And I don't know who wrote this or what this means down here. I mean, people like, it looks like to Jeff, people kind of wrote things on it, and it's really fading. Go ahead. And then
Where were the bands?
Hmm?
Where were the bands read?
I'm gonna go into that. We have this up now, so we'll go talk about this right now. Go ahead, go to the next one. Okay, this was the table of contents. These are the pages in order, so you're gonna see the whole document. And this was the table of contents. And this, we tried to read this. It's not very, very good. This shows that Sir Isaac Taylor, excuse me. Isaac Taylor was the surveyor. So he is signing that this is true and correct. Okay, then on the contents of the page, you'll see, we're going into Sadbury. Dawn and I had a conversation about that. But, and you see it says it's on page 13 in this document. Go ahead. Okay. This shows the original 2,000 acres. First of all, Thomas Faulkner purchased this in October 1714. So it was before he was married. When he came over here, he had to have a place to stay. And he had no land. So he obviously purchased some land before he was married. But then you come down here and you're going to see the 333 acres. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for 6 children. And they each got 333 acres. And then Thomas Faulkner later purchased 15 more in October of 1716. So they were buying more and more land afterwards. So, but just so you know that they were given, this was set aside and they all did get these 33 acres. Go
But the
ahead.
two on the bottom of that were probably Farees.
Yes.
Which,
At the bottom of the
bottom,
page.
Previous.
Yeah, let me go back.
If you
Go
go
back.
back. Can go
I
back.
could, yes, I can if I work my magic here. There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
John and Daniel.
yeah, John
But
Faree.
those were additional
But
ones.
these
Yeah.
were additional ones, they didn't count, I'm
purchased
going with
those.
this.
Okay.
Because
That's
the
the grant.
question that was proposed before was that Mary had not gotten her 2,000 acres.
Oh, but you were made to point that Faulkner bought additional land. Well, so
Yeah,
did we.
okay, and they, of course, did.
They all did. They all
Well
did.
taken.
All right.
Okay, go to the next one. Okay, I don't think there's anything
There's
on
Martin
this.
Kundig up there.
Yeah, Martin Kendig, he got 800 acres.
And Martin Kendig was,
My ancestor.
oh,
A settler,
Yeah,
he's
the
surveyor
original.
and settler, agent for William Penn.
Yeah, this was in April
He's the
1714.
Mennonite leader, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
It's
yes,
also
okay. And
Federalism,
then here,
yes.
up the top, we have Richard Davis.
Daniel.
We have Daniel Faree, Richard Davis, he purchased 150 acres, and that was 1716. He was already married now. And Daniel Faree, 600 in 1716. Philip, ditto, same thing, 600.
Date.
Isaac.
Isaac Lefevre, 300, ditto. And, you know, it goes on and on. So they kept buying more and more land. Okay, go ahead. All right, now this was the bands. This is the original sheet, and I will tell you, this is phenomenal that we have a copy of it. Because a very well-known researcher and a very honest and proven person, Eleanor Edmondson from Texas, sent this to me. Because I couldn't get a copy. And like the girls told me in the office, no one gets in the vault but the priest. But the priest couldn't even give me this. Eleanor had been there, I don't know how many years ago, but she had been to the church and she requested this, and it was the woman who was dealing with the genealogy that was still living, and she got this copy from her. Now, of course, this is hard to read, and the original document is very dark. I'm going to show you a difference in a minute. But we have here Thomas Faulkner, Mary Catherine Faree, or Farah, they were calling it then, were married 1715 of Newcastle, the last day of June, so June 30th, 1715. Wow. And then here's Richard Davis to Jane Farah of Conestoga, was married 22nd day of August 1715. So now they were both finally married. But now go to the next page. Now, the secretary that works there now, I showed this to her. She said, geez, it is kind of hard to read. I said, yeah, so she is working on this. And you can see now Thomas Faulkner, Mary Catherine, and Richard Davis, and Jane Farah. But it's a little easier to read. She's photoshopping, and she's going to Photoshop this whole thing. You can see what she started to do, how she started to clean it up. So maybe we can get a cleaner copy when she's finally finished with it. But at least this is a little bit easier to read. But the thing, the main thing is we now have a copy of this. And we did find out, I think this is something kind of interesting, that being married by bands in the church, well, I'm getting ahead of myself because I still have some notes here. Okay. It was agreed that Thomas Faulkner would marry Mary Catherine and Richard Davis would marry Jane, and that both couples were married by church bands. and which meant that banns are an announcement in your church of your intention to marry, and a chance for anyone to put forward a reason or an argument as to why this marriage should not lawfully take place. You may have banns read out in the church. You have to have attended the church for 3 consecutive Sundays during 3 months before the wedding. And it is usually done over 3 consecutive Sundays, as I said, but does not have to be. That was it. They were considered married with no official ceremony. So they, as I said, Thomas Faulkner and Mary Catherine were married June 30th. Now, at that particular time, if you pay attention to dates, as people do today, they weren't so concerned about that. And apparently, Mary Catherine was pregnant at the time that they were married. And now we think, oh my goodness. But in those days, but in those days, it was very important, maybe not to wait until after you were married to have children. Because, you know, people wanted to know, and especially the men, wanted to know if the women could produce. If they couldn't have children, well, maybe they didn't want to marry her then. So it was very important to them. So Mary Catherine, we know that she had to be pregnant because she had her baby. She was married in June and she had her baby the same year. So I think that's very interesting.
Preemie.
What?
Preemie, it said, preemie.
Okay. So now all 6 children could inherit their 33 acres because now they were married. They were promised. It was promised to them. Pardon me?
333.
What did I say?
33.
I'm sorry. 333 acres. Thank you. Now, if you divide 2,000 acres by 6, you're going to get 1,998 acres. So then the question came up in the meeting, well, what happened to Mary's 2 acres? Mary didn't get anything. She's not mentioned. Mary was the one who arranged for all of this. She got what she wanted. She got the land for her children. Now, 2 acres. And of course, this whole thing is supported by Isaac Taylor's Surveyor's book. But if there were 2 acres left, I would like to think that maybe she lived on the last 2 acres herself until her death, which would only seem logical because she had provided for her children in the new land as promised, and it was now known as paradise. What more could you want?
Yeah, right.
Your mother helped you out and your mother gave you paradise. Gee. But there's another argument. That 2 acres maybe could have been a roadway into the property, you know, that they had to use property. So Mary didn't go without a shelter, obviously. So it really kind of doesn't matter where Mary was. She was provided for. She had provided for her children, which I think is truly commendable. Yeah. Oh, and at the end, I do have some things I'll place on the table, I don't know, I guess back there, that I have some handouts. The first one is a handout that explains about the church, so it's double-sided, so you can take one. But you can actually see this was a thatched roof on the original church, which is very interesting. And there's a cemetery all the way around the church. And here's the wall of this church, of the cemetery rather. And when my husband and I went there last year, he was very impressed by the fact that the stones in this cemetery are so old. And there was one that I actually saw that was a very long tablet. And it started at the top of it and it just went down. And at the bottom it said, this was written by Dr. Benjamin Franklin. Yes, sir.
How far is the church from here?
I don't
About an
know, how
hour.
far is pardon me?
40 minutes?
40
It's
miles.
It's
It's very
Okay.
close. And it actually, the church office, I can't remember the address of the church, wait a minute, is it on here?
Church office is half a block away.
Yeah, the information is on here that you can pick up. And, I just forgot
I'm
what I was
sorry.
gonna say. Oh, around the entrance to the church. First of all, if you go on down the street, I can't remember the name of the street. George, do you remember that? That we went, that the street is on this, runs this way. But then there's the other street that is right in front of the entrance to the church. It's an old cobblestone street. And I said to the priest, I said, I can just hear the clopping of the horses on the stones and hear the buggies, visualize them pulling it up. And he said, we used to have 4 cobblestone streets, but they were in such bad shape that now we only have this one. Well, I tell you, this one is not in good shape either. I think eventually, somebody's gonna fall, break a leg, ankle, or whatever. But it is in front of this church. Now, on the street, if you can imagine the street being out here, and we're on the inside, and we're looking at the inside of this wall, right at the entrance, there are 2 plaques on the inside facing the cemetery. And one lists the name of the men who served in the Revolutionary War that are buried in that cemetery, and I believe one of them was James Lefevre. Anybody there that can confirm that? I think it was James Lefevre. I never heard his name before, but he's listed on that grouping. And then there is a George Reed. George Reed, well, it says Reading. So maybe that's where we got the name Reading, from him. But he also fought in that war, and then the other plaque is to him only, because he is one of the original signers of the Declaration of Independence. So, Donna, I'm gonna let you explain this one.
Oh, okay.
What was the address for the church?
I have to look at it. I have a handout.
It's
It's
on
on.
Harmony Street, Harmony and Market.
Well, okay, Market. Market is the one that goes this way, that it's in bad shape. The other one is Harmony, and if you go all the way down, a couple blocks down, that's where the church office is, at 100 Harmony Street. And beyond that, if you want to go straight ahead, well, then you're just going to go right into the Delaware River. But there is a walkway that you can go out and walk over the river a little bit. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, just to visit. And you're welcome, if the office is open, you're welcome to go in there. But the church office is not in the church, it's a couple blocks down. Yeah,
Maybe you said this, why were they married in a church in Delaware? Was it the only established church in the area?
I don't know that. Well, this was the first church of
I'll
England
address that
established.
later.
She's gonna address it later.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we'll save that.
Hopefully, at least.
Yes,
When Penn got his 3 lower counties, that's now Delaware, and then the rest of Pennsylvania, eventually they had to decide where they divided.
mhm,
And since Delaware is flat, the tallest thing they could triangulate from was either the steeple of Emmanuel Church or the courthouse.
uh-huh,
People differ. So if you look at a map of that arc that divides Delaware from Pennsylvania, it's a 13-mile radius from that steeple.
thank you. Go ahead.
This is the map that is on the website that is there. And it doesn't talk anything about Mary Catherine Ferry Faulkner. So what we thought is maybe this was probably after they sold the land. And I'll talk a little bit about Thomas Faulkner and Mary Catherine later. And they eventually sold their piece of land. So I'm thinking this map is after they moved away from the Ferry original tract. So maybe there's some note that could be put on the website, as a request from our line, that this kind of was a later map that she actually, and I have hopefully, with some research later on this afternoon, I'll show a map where I think they owned 2 different parcels of 167 acres each, that was divided up before this map. So this map is a later drawing of the family after they sold their land and moved. So that's basically what. So if that could be done, I think that would help.
This is from a booklet published, I forget by whom, on a tour of the lands. That's where it came from.
Oh, okay. Well, I just think that that's later than what the
I don't know
original-
as to the day, I just know I recognize the map from the document, or from the booklet.
Okay, this is the handout. I'm gonna put these back there and you can each take one, but it's nice. It has a picture of the original church. And it's, as I said, it's double-sided. They do not have the address of the church. They have the address of, it's called, the parish office is on the Strand and Harmony Street. So, but it's right up the street. You can't miss it. Or if you get lost, just ask somebody right there.
Look for the steeple.
But,
Just look for the steeple.
yeah, look for the steeple.
Highest point.
I like that. And then I only have 8 of these, and this is a book that talks about the church and what their sermons were going to be and things like that. Emmanuel on the Green, and this is what the church looks like inside. And on Saturday, Betsy and Jack Brooks and my husband and I, we're going to be staying after the picnic. We're going over to Delaware. We have reservations at a bed and breakfast over there, staying a couple nights. And we are going to attend the church service on Sunday.
That's nice.
And Betsy has already ordered flowers in the name of the Faree family, correct, Betsy?
That's nice, that's
For
lovely.
us. So we're kind of excited. My husband, when he was there, he was just overwhelmed with this church. It is absolutely beautiful inside. Some of the things that remain, like the church railing, in the front, is original, but other things have been changed. But you have to remember, it's the original church because of the walls. They're very, very proud of that. And you can see these are the pews and the little doors on the pews. But if you wanted those little doors, you had to pay for those. And then up front, or this is the back of the church actually, and they're coming forward. But up front, when you come down, you'll come to a cross there. Then there's more seating back there. There's more seating back there. I mean, it is truly amazing, and that this church is in the shape that it's in. And the priest did tell us, he's a young priest, he told us that some of his colleagues are very jealous that he has this position at this church. But he was very, very nice and very willing. When I talked to him, I wanted information about the connection with the Faree family. He said, "Oh, I'm very well acquainted with the family." But I will have to tell you, I have not found anything that says that we were of royalty. People like to think that, but I don't think we were. Remember, they were silk merchants. They bought and sold. So they sold to royalty because apparently, I've read that the girls embellished the silks. But, and later on they moved into making wine. But there's nothing to support that they were of royal birth. Thank you. I don't think they were poor, Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You've been looking for that information
No,
too?
I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
I never heard that we were.
Yeah.
Some people seem to think that.
Oh, okay.
It was in some things.
So I was just trying to dispel, something that, an idea that some people have, that there's nothing to support that. They were well known and they were good people. And people respected them and respected her. you know, because, well, Daniel, they really didn't know him. But I will say, can I share, Betsy, about the Frenchman? About the Frenchman? Or is that taking part of yours? The Frenchman.
Back to the
Say it in.
Can I share the
person's right.
Great-grandfather.
what you found about the Frenchman, who the Frenchman was?
I guess, I don't know what it is, but go ahead.
Your book, when you were over in Germany, you got that book that's written in German. And is that gonna take something away from your presentation? Okay. But Betsy did find when she was over in Germany that she found this book and the man, she was talking to the woman, but the man was there, he understood English but couldn't speak English. And he left for a good while. Finally came back with a book, and they gave this book to Betsy. But the only reference that it refers to Daniel Ferry was he was known as the Frenchman.
Cute.
So therefore, we do have proof he was French.
That's cute.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Why was Marie Marie called that madam?
Maybe because she was a married woman, she might
Repeat
be
the
called,
question.
I don't think there was any derogatory term meant there.
Repeat the question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to repeat the question. Why was Mary Ferry known as Madam? Does anybody else have any suggestions?
In French, it's madame.
Madame.
That is
Well,
French for
same
Mrs.
thing.
It's French for Mrs.
Okay, so in French, they refer to a married woman as Madame or Madame or Madam?
Yeah, if you're single, it's
Okay.
Mademoiselle.
She was a countess.
French for Mrs.
Pardon me?
She was a countess, wasn't she?
No.
No.
There's no proof to substantiate that.
Okay, well, Madame means my lady.
Okay. Well, certainly it would be a term of,
What's the earliest reference to her with that title, though?
I don't know.
I've never seen it.
It's very late.
Just what we call it.
1880 in Lancaster. And she would probably have been known as Widow Ferry
Yes.
at the time.
Well, she still carried her maiden name until after she died, then it was changed over here. So maybe that's the difference between Europe and the United States too. I don't know. Yes, sir.
Please don't take this wrong. This is our first time here.
Oh, that's
so we're
fine.
hearing a lot of things for the first time.
I know, and you're
Uh,
overwhelmed with
yeah.
what you're hearing. I've
But-
been there and I'm still there.
But you're talking about a church that was an hour from here. Was that the nearest church, or what is?
That was the only church
So that's
of England.
Church of England.
so that's where our ancestors attended church, even though it wow.
Well, some of them
No.
did. Some of
No,
them did, and
it
these
was
two
a-
girls were married in that church.
It was the only church of England, so for the marriages to be recognized,
Ah,
they had to be in a
They had
church
to
of
be in
England.
an Anglican church,
Yeah.
Episcopal church.
okay.
Sure. Hey, don't ever hesitate to ask questions. That's the only way you learn.
That is a great question, because I've been trying to, talking to Ken and stuff, where did they worship and stuff, and it's like, you know, that's one thing we need to solve somehow.
Yeah. Anything else?
Probably like
Yes, ma'am.
This was excellent, and I was wondering if there's any way that we can get your notes or anything about, from your presentation.
A copy of the PDF.
I could do that.
This will be up on the website
Oh,
pretty quick afterwards. I get it to my son-in-law.
Can you make it a PDF, your presentation, and then you can send it an email blast?
I can't do that because I don't have the intelligence to do work.
Her script I do not have, but I just did the PowerPoint for her and she did the script.
Yeah, you can.
So I can put it
Maybe we
together.
could do that in a
I don't have
newsletter.
it.
We could send it out.
Well, you won't have the pictures.
I won't have the pictures, but we would have the
They were on
content.
the website.
Yeah.
But you have to understand with me, I would love to know what I'm doing. But you see, when I was born, we didn't have these things. And these children that come out of the womb today come out like this.
Yes.
They know what they're doing, and it just comes to them naturally.
One of the issues with it is copyright. Like this picture that of the church here was from that brochure that I took off the brochure. I do not have copyright permission to put this on the website. So I don't want this on the website. I
But you
did
can
it,
send it as a PDF.
but I can send it out, but
Yeah.
I don't
Or
particularly
you could
want it.
ask permission.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of other things in there that, I know Carolyn took a lot of the pictures, which are fine, but,
Oh, and I had permission to do that, I was with the priest.
right, I'm not,
Yeah.
that I'm not worried about. It's this, like this one, I didn't get permission to take that picture. Or from the website, I didn't get permission to
But
take
he,
that one.
but he gave
you
me
know.
permission to use
That's-
these
that's-
things.
Okay, well, and that may cover it, but I,
He was just thrilled that,
Sorry,
that
keep
I
going.
was going to do
go
something
on,
with
it's
it.
okay, we'll talk about it later.
Keep going.
Okay, okay,
think
any
that's-
other questions? Okay, the only thing I would just like to suggest to you is please, just talk to people. Talk to everybody you can. You're gonna find there are people you didn't know you were related to, as I've done. And it just keeps going on and on and on. And I was an only child. So of course, I'm so glad to have a big family. Thank